I am really very much honored for having given this opportunity of opening this great music festival.
There are moments in history so electric, so alive with human energy, that even decades later, they refuse to fade. August 1969 was one of those moments. A sprawling dairy farm in upstate New York became the beating heart of a generation. 500,000 souls converging in the summer heat, drawn together by music, by hope, and by something they couldn't quite name but desperately needed to feel. We're talking, of course, about Woodstock. Most people think they know the Woodstock story. They've seen the famous images, the mud-soaked crowds, the peace signs, the performers silhouetted against a hazy sky. But here's the truth. The full picture of what happened on that farm in Bethel, New York, has never been completely told. There are photographs, moments, and stories buried beneath the iconic surface that reveal a richer, stranger, more human version of events. Tonight, we're pulling back that curtain. These are the photos from Woodstock that couldn't be seen before, and the remarkable stories hiding behind them. Before a single chord was strummed on that main stage, before the amplifiers hummed to life, something unexpected happened. A man dressed in flowing white robes stepped forward to address the crowd. Not a rock star, not a promoter, but a spiritual teacher named Sri Swami Satchidananda. He had been born in India, had studied under great masters, and had eventually made his way to America, where he became a beloved figure in New York's yoga and meditation community. What most people don't realize is that the decision to have him open the festival was not random. The organizers genuinely believed that Woodstock needed to begin with something that transcended entertainment. They wanted a blessing, and Swami Satchidananda delivered one that left the massive crowd in stunned silence. He looked out at that ocean of faces and called everyone his brothers and sisters. He spoke about the devastation of war, about the emptiness that violence leaves behind, and about how music, real music, music born from the soul, carries a power that no weapon ever could. He said that music was a celestial sound, and that it could bring peace to the whole world. Standing before 500,000 people, his words didn't feel like a speech. They felt like a prayer. Photographs from that opening moment capture something rare. A crowd that size, completely still, completely present. It is one of the most quietly powerful images in the entire Woodstock archive. Here is something the history books gloss over. Woodstock almost didn't happen at Woodstock. The festival was originally planned for Wallkill, New York, at a site called Howard Mills Industrial Park. Permits had been arranged, logistics were underway, and then, just weeks before the scheduled date, local officials passed a new ordinance specifically designed to block the concert. The organizers were left scrambling. It was in this moment of crisis that a quiet, unassuming dairy farmer named Max Yaska entered the story. Yaska owned 600 acres of rolling land near the town of Bethel in Sullivan County, and when the organizers approached him, he said yes. Not because he was a counterculture figure. By most accounts, he was a fairly conservative man, but because he believed in people's right to gather peacefully. He reportedly told a neighbor who pressured him not to allow the festival. If the generation gap is to be closed, we older people have to do more than we have done. Photographs of Yaska's farm before the crowds arrived show a picture of pastoral simplicity, gentle slopes, open sky, a natural bowl in the landscape that seemed almost designed to hold an audience. When 500,000 people filled that bowl, something magical happened. The land itself seemed to absorb the energy. Later photographs show Yaska standing near the crowd, watching with an expression that mixes astonishment with quiet pride. He knew he had done something significant. He died in 1973, only 4 years after the festival, never fully aware of just how permanently his name would be written into history. The organizers had been cautiously optimistic, planning for somewhere between 50,000 and 200,000 attendees. What they got was closer to 500,000, and the infrastructure of Sullivan County simply could not handle it. The New York State Thruway was shut down. Route 17B, the main road leading to the festival, became a parking lot stretching for miles in every direction. Photographs from this period are haunting in their own way. You see cars stretched to the horizon, bumper to bumper, many of them abandoned at odd angles along roadsides and in fields. Their owners had simply gotten out, grabbed what they could carry, and started walking. Some of them walked 5 miles or more through the summer heat to reach the festival grounds. And remarkably, the overwhelming majority of them did it without complaint, without anger, and with something approaching joy. One photograph shows a young couple walking barefoot along the highway shoulder, shoes tied around their necks, laughing at something between them. Behind them, an endless line of motionless vehicles. They didn't care. They were going to Woodstock. That image says everything about the spirit of the people who attended. They had not come for convenience. They had come for something that couldn't be measured in comfort. On the second day of the festival, the sky cracked open. Rain fell in heavy, relentless sheets, turning the festival grounds into a vast landscape of mud. Stage managers panicked. Equipment was hastily covered with plastic sheeting. And then something remarkable happened. The crowd, rather than retreating, leaned in. Photographs from the storm show people dancing in the rain, with complete abandon. Mud-covered figures with arms raised, faces tilted upward, laughing as the water streamed down their faces. Some performers recall looking out from a stage during the rain and being moved to tears by what they saw. Not chaos, not misery, but kind of collective joy that defied all logic. One particularly striking photograph shows a young woman standing alone in an open patch of muddy ground, arms stretched wide, eyes closed, completely soaked. There is no performance in her expression. She is simply there, fully inhabiting the moment. It is impossible to look at that photograph and not feel something. The rain at Woodstock didn't break the spirit of the event. In a strange way, it deepened it. It stripped away everything unnecessary and left only the raw human experience of being alive and present with 500,000 other people. The lineup at Woodstock reads like a fever dream of musical history. Richie Havens opened the performances and played so long, because other acts were stuck in traffic, that he eventually ran out of prepared songs and began improvising, which is how the iconic song Freedom was born, created on the spot in front of 500,000 people. Tim Hardin, a criminally underappreciated folk singer, took the stage on that first day and performed with a vulnerability that moved people deeply. His voice carried an ache that seemed to resonate with the strange, bittersweet mood of the era, a time of enormous possibility, shadowed by the darkness of Vietnam and social upheaval. He was paid $2,000 for his performance, which was considered generous at the time. Sly and the Family Stone performed on the second day and delivered what many witnesses still describe as one of the greatest live performances they have ever seen. The band was radical simply by existing, a racially and gender-integrated group at a time when that was genuinely transgressive. Their performance of I Want to Take You Higher reportedly had people dancing who hadn't danced since childhood. They were paid $7,000, a top-tier fee for the festival. And then there was Joe Cocker. His performance has been described by those who were there as a religious experience. He sang with his entire body, contorting and trembling as though the music was moving through him rather than coming from him. The photographs from his set show a performer in complete surrender to the music. After he finished, a thunderstorm rolled in with almost theatrical timing, as if the sky itself had been waiting for him to finish before making its entrance. History tends to romanticize Woodstock, and there is genuine romance in the story, but there was also real hardship, real danger, and real loss. The medical team hired for the festival had been staffed for a crowd a fraction of the actual size. When 500,000 people arrived, the system was overwhelmed almost immediately. Medical records from the festival document staggering numbers. Hundreds of cases of heat exhaustion, asthma attacks, and drug-related emergencies. People who had gone barefoot sustained serious foot injuries on glass and debris hidden in the grass. Antiseptic ran out so completely that improvised alternatives, including vodka, were reportedly used to clean wounds. Eventually, military helicopters arrived carrying emergency medical supplies, landing in open fields while crowds parted to let them through. 2 people died during the festival, a tragedy that is rarely acknowledged in the celebratory retellings. One was a 17-year-old named Raymond Mizak, who was tragically killed when a tractor moved through a camping area in the dark. The other was a young man whose death was attributed to a drug overdose. And yet, in photographs from the medical tents and makeshift aid stations, what stands out most is not suffering but compassion. Image after image shows strangers caring for strangers, holding hands, wiping foreheads, sitting quietly beside people they had never met. Volunteers who had come to enjoy the music found themselves giving it up to help others. That impulse, that instinct toward care in the midst of chaos, may be the truest thing that Woodstock ever revealed about human nature. When the music finally ended, when the last amplifier fell silent, and the crowds began the long walk back to their abandoned cars, what remained was extraordinary in its own quieter way. Photographs from the aftermath show a landscape transformed almost beyond recognition. The gentle slopes of Max Yaska's farm were covered in discarded belongings, flattened grass, and the evidence of 500,000 lives briefly intersecting. Local residents, who had been largely cut off from their own communities for the duration of the festival, unable to get in or out due to the traffic, emerged to find their world completely altered. Some were angry, others were simply stunned. A few, to their own surprise, found themselves moved by what they saw, not the mess, but the magnitude of human longing the mess represented. All these people had come here for something. That fact alone was astonishing. One photograph from the Exodus shows a young man sitting on the hood of a car, staring back at the emptying festival grounds. His expression is difficult to read, somewhere between grief and gratitude. He looks like someone who has just experienced something he suspects he will spend the rest of his life trying to fully understand. The Woodstock Music and Art Fair lasted 3 days. In those 3 days, it generated enough stories, enough images, enough moments of genuine human connection to fill a century of telling. We've been telling them ever since, and we haven't come close to exhausting them. What these unseen photographs remind us, the ones that never made the front pages, the ones that capture the quiet corners and the private moments and the unguarded faces, is that Woodstock was not primarily an event. It was an experiment, an accidental, chaotic, beautiful experiment in what happens when you put 500,000 people together and take away, for just a few days, most of the structures that normally keep them apart. The answer, it turns out, is both messy and more hopeful than anyone expected. People got sick and people helped them. People got lost, and people guided them home. People stood in the rain and found it magnificent. In that sense, these photographs are not just relics of 1969. They are a record of something timeless, the stubborn, improbable human tendency, even in the midst of disorder, to reach toward one another. That is the story that couldn't be fully seen before. And now, finally, you have seen it.